It's only entertainment.
Welcome back to The Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your cannabis business podcast. With me is James Whitcomb, CEO at Frontier Risk. They're a tech-enabled insurance solution in the cannabis sector led by former cannabis executives. James, thanks for being on The Talking Hedge.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
Well, how's the cannabis industry changed since you first got involved?
Well, I think it's changed a lot. I first got involved in the cannabis industry really from a research perspective in 2015, and then being a plant touching operator vertical as one of the first 5 licenses in Florida in 2016. I think your listener group probably already very well understands how the capital markets have changed. I think maybe not necessarily a need to rehash the roller coaster, kind of the falling roller coaster that it's been recently. But I will say, being on the circuit for the last 6 months, I am seeing a little more positivity, a little more optimism than the 6 or 9 months before that. I think that there's a sense that in a lot of states, price compression has kind of reached its bottom. There are a lot of folks in the single and multifamily office space, certainly, who really had to be on the sidelines. And even if they didn't have something concrete, some kind of movement at the federal level was enough to kind of get them off the fence and maybe not writing checks, but starting diligence processes, right, in the last 6 months. And I think that's the biggest difference that I've seen.
What about unique risks or challenges? I mean, you're at a conference right now in Scottsdale, Arizona for insurance. What maybe explain just what's unique about it or challenges about the industry and how you guys are approaching that?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, any person involved in cannabis is probably all too painfully aware that, cannabis insurance for really all lines of coverage across property and casualty, and particularly professional lines, is more expensive than it should be. It's unaffordable. I think that there are certain large MSOs that know that it's unaffordable, but keep parting ways with the money because they don't have a choice. And then on the other end, there are small and medium-sized businesses where the unaffordability of it matrixed against the requirement of it means that in some cases it's preventing them from operating at all in certain cases, or it's forcing them out of business. Is that factor forcing them out of business as much as not getting paid on time from purchasers? No, but it's probably a top 5 issue as far as current pressures on the cannabis industry, where lack of capital markets exposure, the difficulty of getting a bank account, which is not as difficult as I think the general public thinks. Insurance is up there. And it's a problem of supply and demand. The conference I'm at is filled mostly with insurance carriers and reinsurers, not really, service providers on the technology side. And it's a great place to really come to grips with the fact that there is really a severely limited universe of reinsurance capacity out there. There are just very few carriers willing to participate in the space. Very few reinsurers behind that, and reinsurance is what drives everything, right, in this industry. And they're not doing it for a multitude of reasons. They're not doing it because there's still a little bit of stigma, right? And everybody knows insurance companies are typically very large, a little bit slower moving, and more conservative than other industries. So, it's not the boardroom of a non-insurance company where they're willing to step off the fence. It's the boardroom where every single board member is saying we shouldn't be doing this, and you've got to convince us why we should take a risk that will become 1-2% of our book and potentially taint the other 98% of our book. Similar to a large federally chartered bank at this point. They're also not doing it because they don't really understand the risk intrinsically. Cannabis insurance, mostly as an industry, has been built by insurance people who are learning cannabis from their clients, and not the other way around, right? And that's the fundamental difference between us and the other cannabis insurance powers that be. And I think the third component, which is related to what I just said, is data. cannabis insurance companies today are not utilizing data, I think, the way that they could be. Whether it's seed to sale data, compliance data, these are all things that you look at these data sets and you can see major operational flags in that data that change your baseline rating and not move it up or move it down depending on what you're seeing. We had a hand in building a lot of these early seed to sale and compliance systems, and so we know how they work. We wrote the SOPs where we know when the guy is or gal is more likely to fat finger a data entry, and so it sort of goes beyond understanding the data.
So, James, you mentioned that insurance companies are learning from their clients instead of the other way around. Is cannabis that much different from traditional ag?
Yes, it is, and I think that question assumes a little bit that people are coming at this from a crop coverage perspective, and maybe sorry, got some loud sharing around a property. Oh, it's all parts of the operation, right? It's property, it's general liability, it's product liability, which is probably the area that most trial attorneys are salivating over, over the next 10 years. It's workers' compensation over to professional lines. It's D&O for private and public companies. It's EPLI, management liability packages. So it's really everything. This is not just about covering a crop. If you want to talk about covering a crop, yes, cannabis sativa is obviously a more finicky crop than your average large scale crop. Which is why this industry has such a hard time growing it really well at scale. This isn't soybeans, it's not corn, it's not lettuce, right? So yeah, it is fundamentally different. And on the indoor side, the properties, as we all know, used to grow this stuff indoors is vastly different from the structures that are used to grow microgreens indoors or in a hybrid greenhouse. So it's very different.
Is there anybody, so at the conference you're at down there in Scottsdale, is anybody talking about artificial intelligence? Right now, we have at our fingertips ChatGPT, which, by the way, I asked for a slogan for you guys, and it said, Guardians of the Green, navigating cannabis risk with expertise, which is pretty cheesy. And then it comes up with, when life gives you lemons, hire us for lemonade. But what role do you see in AI technology playing? And is anybody talking about it right now where you're at?
Yeah, I mean, look, the insurance industry has been talking about AI for a long time because there's so much data to crunch. And as long as you're able to build a framework for a large language model to follow, it results in more automated underwriting decisions, right? But what I'll say is that, and this is with all the respects in the world towards the insurance industry, the insurance industry talks a lot about data and innovation and the way that AI can kind of supercharge the analysis of data, but they really do want to see large benches of physical human underwriting talent to back that up. So I think that we work with a company and have helped develop something called Underwrite GPT, which is basically just processing a lot of data, and we set certain trigger points and say, okay, based on our institutional experience and based on the pricing data we're seeing out there, if the data is saying X, we price it as Y. Okay, now automating that becomes an AI closed loop system. But the reality is you still need the human touch of underwriters. And I think, our company that has a retail brokerage as well, which is what we started with, that's really the best filter. I mean, everybody knows, right? So sort of what companies out there in the cannabis space are kind of doing it right, and everybody knows those ones that are maybe skirting a regulation here and there, right? Because of just we've grown up with them, we sort of know who they are and how they operate, and so that's a little hard for AI to figure out, at least this year, which is why you need that human touch for large language models processing cannabis underwriting data.
What do you see with opportunities in the industry with legalization? So the cannabis industry is seeing some rapidly changes in legal landscape with potentially rescheduling to Schedule 3. How do you see that federal legalization potentially affecting the cannabis industry as a whole?
Well, yeah, I mean, starting with the cannabis insurance industry, I think that rescheduling to 3 all of a sudden allows, very large global reinsurance balance sheets to jump into the space, right? They've held back because of the federal illegality, and it starts to become, from an underwriting lens, from an insurance lens, the same thing as the way the insurance industry underwrites and approaches the pharmaceutical industry, right? And of course, that's what Schedule 3 kind of implies. So I think it's inevitable, and I think folks, if you ask folks about kind of how the banking industry changes for cannabis when rescheduling happens, whenever that is, I think they would give you the same answer, which is it's going to have a lot of large balance sheets come off the sidelines and come in and play. However, that doesn't necessarily mean they understand how to play and what the rules are or what the rules should be. And so we're here to be that conduit. As somebody that will be a program administrator, it's really our job to invest these reinsurance balance sheets on behalf of reinsurers, on behalf of carriers, in a smart way where we're picking superior loss experience plays based on what we know and based on all the underwriting data that we collect from a bunch of third-party data sources. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of brains coming in that I think, need to be guided in carefully, whether it's insurance, banking, or anything else, to sort of responsibly find their way into the right cannabis place.
What about the future of cannabis? I always like to ask for crystal ball predictions. Cannabis industry moves, fairly quick, maybe 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but it moves. And so, having said that, where do you see the cannabis industry and or insurance market in particular evolving in the future?
As much as I could have a crystal ball, I think that, I mean, there's so much to be said about this. I think that the one thing that caught everybody by surprise was, I think, the timing of the Schedule 3 push or recommendation by HHS. And, there's some people who say it was an inadvertent leak. There's some people who say it wasn't. Whatever the case is, I haven't talked to a single portfolio manager on the equity or on the credit side that touches cannabis that knew that was coming when it was coming. And I think the only thing you can count on is that you can't count on anything from a timing perspective, especially from this administration. So, there are some people who say, oh, well, the DOJ should typically respond in 90 days or 120 days. Yeah, I think all bets are off. I don't think anybody knows when they'll respond. And I think that there are hardcore conservative forces that will try to get them to not respond at all, because that would be I would say, conservative victory. Despite how popular this substance and the use of this substance is among conservative voters. But so I don't want to. It's a little bit of a cop-out answer to say, the only thing that I know is that we don't know anything. But I'm optimistic in that sense as well, that because I think a lot of the smartest minds didn't call the timing of that announcement, I think we'll be surprised in a positive way again. And I'm on that side of the fence, 51%, as opposed to the 49% of me that's saying DOJ won't respond to this for another 18 months. I think something will happen. I think it'll happen before the election. So that's my crystal ball.
Yeah, I think the consensus is don't hold your breath. But having said that, if people have more questions or they want to get a hold of you, James, where can they get a hold of you over at Frontier Risk?
Go to our website, frontierrisk.com, contact us form, etc. You can use that to contact us. You can use that to buy insurance from us. And we're all on there. The whole team is on there. You can see our backgrounds. You can see how we've operated cannabis companies. It's all connected to LinkedIn. So that's where to find us.
All right. We'll put that in the show notes. But with that, I think we're going to have to roll this one up. I want to thank my guest, James Whitcomb, CEO at Frontier Risk. Appreciate you being on the Talking Hedge. And I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Edge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Or don't. And I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.
Thanks for listening to today's show. To check out more great cannabis podcasts, go to podconnects.com. Here's a preview of one of our other shows.
Hey friends, I'm Brannon.
And I'm Saba.
And we are your host of the Cannabis Hangout podcast, an educational platform to connect with the cannabis community and share personal stories while breaking the stigma of marijuana.
Join us every Sunday at 7 p.m. to gain valuable insight with different perspectives from industry leaders, growers, and medical marijuana patients.
This is a place to learn so much from different angles in the cannabis industry. So tune in while we break it all down.